Hi everybody, welcome along to the National Cup Special. I'm Conor Meany and I'm very fortunate to be joined by three people here. I've got Kieran Shannon, a journalist with the Irish Examiner. I've got Karen Hennessy from Meteors and McHale from Ballina. So you're very welcome, guys.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thanks, Conor. Thank you.
Yeah, so usually, obviously, this time of the year, we'd be up in the arena in Tala having our cup finals, but with everything that's going on, that's not possible. But one of the things that happens at each year's cup finals is that we honor the 25-year anniversary teams. And this year we have obviously Meteors and Ballina are our 25-year anniversary team. So we wanted to take a look at kind of the big picture of what was going on around that time and talk to the guys and see what some of their memories were. So I'm actually going to start with you, Kieran. Just in terms of like the cup itself. So the cup came along slightly after some of the other competitions, and what was kind of the genesis of the cup and how did it kind of grow into the beast that it kind of is today, where it's probably the marquee event that we have?
Yeah, so obviously the sport went to another stratosphere with the influx of the Americans in the 79-80 season, and I suppose we had a great tournament culture throughout pre-Americans, pre-National League. I suppose that if we were to say there's possibly one downside to the cup, has been its seriousness within 5 years or so between different things. We've kind of lost a bit of the tournament culture, albeit I think a great innovation to the cup tradition was there was a few years there in the late noughties where we split the semi-final and final weekend, and it really didn't take off the same way that there was that magic, albeit you could understand for both teams. I mean, you know, you're playing on a Saturday night, like these games that Karen and Liam played an awful lot of games on a Saturday night semi-final and to try and get yourself ready for the Sunday. So you could understand why it happened, but as a festival of basketball, something was a little diluted. Whereas I think bringing it down to Cork for the semi-final, it's a fantastic basketball weekend, and we have the cup final weekend, so we have two parts of it. That's been great. But just, I suppose what happened was it was very clever actually by the leading administrators at the time. Your father, I remember being part of in the photo with Noel Keating in the Mansion House to do the first cup draw in, it would have been 83, 84. So like what you would have traditionally had was a National League and then the top four National Cup stroke National Championships. But those, I suppose they were trailblazers, real people of vision. The likes of Mary Bainham would have been on the executive at the time as well. They identified that January was very quiet. For our younger viewers, will find it very hard to relate to this, but we grew up, Karen and Liam and myself would be of the same vintage, not you, Conor, maybe, but we had 2 channel land. That's what we had. So the only sport you really had in January, or at the end of January, was kicking in was 5 Nations rugby at the time. So they identified there's a gap in the market for live television, or for television. What about if we televise the National Cup? And they also understood that the cup psyche would appeal to the Irish psyche. And so they did the draw. There was a little bit resistance the first year. Neptune, the Mon and Killarney didn't go into it, but the following year they got guarantee of television from RTE. So after the first one being initially in the Oblate Hall, we had the Neptune Stadium was open in January 85, and so the cup semi-finals went down there and it just took off, and it was so good. It was on tape delay, the first cup final, but that was the famous one where Strickland on the buzzer against Demons, and RTE just said, we have to go live with this. And so we had a situation where for the late for about 10 years you had as much live basketball cup finals, cup semi-finals and finals on than you had hurling and football. The only games that were shown live were All Ireland semi-finals and finals and National Cup basketball semi-finals and finals. So it brought it to another atmosphere. Television, I think, is how it eclipsed, let's say, the postseason top 4. Yeah. So it was a great innovation, and you know, here we are. Unfortunately, we're not here.
Exactly.
Yeah, such a pity.
Liam, growing up, when did it kind of come onto your radar that this is like one of the big competitions? Do you have an early memory of kind of being to one of the finals or anything else that you were kind of like? I think the first Ballina final you didn't play in, your brothers were playing. Was that maybe one of them?
Well, yeah, but even before that, Conor, obviously we were Division 2 at the time, and you're aspiring to get to that level. But we would watch the cups on TV and stuff like that when they started being televised. And I guess it's just like the Gaelic footballers and the hurlers. Like we were saying, wouldn't it be great to get there someday and play in the cup semi-finals? So it all started off with that. I got hurt. I hurt my ankle about 3 weeks before that cup semi-finals and finals that we were in. So I went to Philadelphia over to Drexel University to get some treatment to see could I get back. But obviously, I was a lot worse hurt than I thought I was. But I think after we lost that final, we got absolutely hammered by Nifton. But like Nifton were a great team. We decided that we were going to give it another shot, and really see could we get back there. So because I played the both sports, it was the equivalent of the All Ireland football final. I think to everybody that was involved in basketball, and anybody, girls or boys, wanted to play in January in the cup semi-finals and finals. And we were no different, but I think we were a little bit different maybe in that we didn't really pay much attention to the league. Once we became an established Division 1 team or Super League team, we kind of put all our eggs into the basket of trying to win the cup. I think we understood that we didn't have the strength and depth maybe to have a good run in the league and also do well in the cup. And I think in '96, the one we're going to be talking about, we got relegated that year, which was obviously a disappointment, but we won the cup. So we salvaged something out of the year. But like the big thing for us for that 8 or 10 year period when we were a competitive side was to do well in the cup and just sustain ourselves in the league, because obviously that was very important for sponsors and to keep the level up.
Yeah, and Kieran, for you had obviously gone away to the States for a couple of years. Was it kind of when you came back that it was first on your radar, or do you remember yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent most of the 80s in the States on scholarship. So when I came back and joined Meteors in 1990, I was really amazed at how much hype was around the cup, and it did seem to be kind of the main highlight of the basketball year. And it was one weekend that everybody really wanted to make as a team. So it was always a focus for us once, and definitely on my radar since about 1990. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with Meteors. So you guys had actually won the cup a couple of years earlier. So '96 is our year, obviously, that we're talking about. And you had already won the cup, but you won the top fours and the cup in the same year in '96. Was that kind of, do you think that was the peak of your kind of group that you had at that stage, or where in the timeline was it for your own team at that stage?
I think it was, as I said, I joined in 1990, and we had there was a mixture of lean years and good years. I think when Joe Kavanagh took over in '91, that's when we really started to gel as a unit. I think Meteors had been very successful in the 80s, and they had won 4 national cups in a row. And it was us trying to sort of emulate or get back to that level of playing. Between 92 and 96, we had a different personnel, but we had good personnel, and we were lucky and unlucky in a lot of cases over the years.
Okay. And Kieran, from an outside perspective, kind of the women's league at that stage, there was obviously kind of Wildcats were just coming into their ascendancy. They, I think, had won the first of their 4 in a row league titles the year before. What was the kind of scene in general at that time?
Yeah, look, it was remarkable depth. You had, Karen referenced, the Meteors team of the 80s, which were phenomenal. Like, they won 4 national leagues, and I mentioned that cup in '85, that famous weekend. The women's final, I'll always remember it. It was a rematch of the previous year. Nevura had won the inaugural cup, but Meteors avenged it and won everything in '85, or won the cup and league in '85. And you had, and what was, just looking at it, like Mary O'Mahony was the MVP in '96. Like, Mary was still there from '84. Mary McMahon coming off the bench. Like, some phenomenal players there. What you had actually after that cup '85, you had the first non-Dublin team to win. You had Blarney and Tralee met in the top 4 that year. And what you had was an incredible competitive depth that I think is only returning to the league now. You know, you would have had there for 12 years just DCU, Glanmire, UL, whereas while Wildcats were about to take off and they won their first league, they kept meeting. They lost 5. They lost something like 4 cup finals and 4 or 3 semi-finals before they'd make the breakthrough in '97, because there was such competitive depth. Like Kieran has got over the line, as she referenced, and there was tough semi-final defeats. They were great games. Like, I'm not just like, all those games went to the buzzer. The amount of them that were 1 points. Like, you had Wildcats, you had Tralee, you had Naivura, Tolka were beginning to emerge. So you had 6 teams, and that's one thing, getting to the semi-final. Like Liam was talking about, Ballina were on the rise, but it took, and he got them to the semi-final in '90, but he was injured, and it was amazing win in the semi-final when Jora got the buzzer beater against Declan's and Lenny. Like, the point is getting to the semi-final, and you wanted to get there, but but getting to Neptune and then the arena, the magic of the Cup 2 is going and winning up in Ballina. Or some of the best occasions I've had is seeing teams go up and lose in Ballina. Like, one of my memories, Liam, I think it was the last game you had in the barn in 2000 against Demons. So that was, then you got to the cup final in 01. Like, do you remember that one? Like,
I think so, yeah. We were 18 down where we at one stage.
You were way down. They had a little guard, Toby Carver. Do you remember that? And and then just you got going. You had, was it Brian Doyle and Terry Smith? It was complete different 2 Americans for
Chris Doyle.
Chris Doyle, yeah.
Yeah, Chris.
And the place was just electric. I compare how Ballina, Liam said, how they paced themselves after winning the league in '92 to save themselves for the cup. They were the best 80s reunion band, or so, you know. They would just gear themselves up for the cup, and they would come like, geez, Liam, you were in the league final again in 07, you know, you were in cup semi-finals 01 or 04, and it was just, Ballina brought a dimension, and particularly having to try and go up there in a first or second round. Like, Liam, you tell me, like, they were, I'd say, the Knights, were they? Like, we'll remember the big games, but I'd say to get to the cup, some of the wins you had there, like,
in '96, we went to Killarney first and won by a point. You know, and like, we could have been easily knocked out in the first round. I think we were 7 down with 3 minutes to go and came back and won it. And I suppose Karen would tell you that was just the pedigree that we had in us at this stage. We knew that even though we were in such a big hole, that we still had a chance of pulling this out. And, you know, you develop that never say die attitude. But like, Kieran, you called it the barn. Like, Killala was horrible. Yeah, Karen, I know you would have played there in the early days as well, probably.
We would, and Maggie, Maggie would have filled we don't hear stories. Yeah, Maggie would fill us in on the stories. Yeah.
Well, it was a beautiful gym in those days. It was brand new in those days, but it deteriorated very fast. And I think we went a season and a half without getting beaten there one year. So I think it was instrumental to us, because we were trying to do things, and we were trying to find a way, and we're trying to beat the Neptunes of this world, who were like the Dublin now of Gaelic football at the time. Late 80s, early 90s, they were just a machine. And we beat the Blue Demons, and we beat the Calesters and the Vincents and the Neptunes in our own gym. And that gave us a massive boost. And I think we grew in confidence from that. But like, there's absolutely no question that the gym in Killala is totally different to the National Stadium. But
that was its appeal. And like, because I remember I actually was staying in the same hotel with the Demons crowd that night in the downhill, and they were really devastated. And there was an acceptance. Like, I remember they had a couple of veterans like Dave Lahan, who had won cups with them on, and I think he was the only Irish player, because Demons were only back in the league a couple of years, and there was appreciation only belatedly that we didn't have guys who had the experience of what even the last 2 years, the young fellas, the Shane Collins had of being in the league, and Mark Kennedy, they weren't ready for Ballina, that atmosphere, and they come from the hall, like they come from the broken hall. So it's one of the sporting memories I'll always have.
Yeah, I Yeah, I think the Ballina, it was the ultimate home court advantage. I know we would have played against Pacers, so after like the 5 hour journey down to Ballina, and then you hit this gym, and the crowd, even for the women's games, they were phenomenal. You know, they really were. And I know the men's, because sometimes they would have played before you, and the crowd in there was, they would raise the roof. It was very hard to play down there, you know.
No, add me to the list of people who's never won down there.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I only got the very tail end of Liam's career,
You
so
would have
I
been
was
very young,
fortunate
yeah.
to. Yeah, I would have only played once or twice down there, but it wasn't in Killala, it was in the newer place. But in the same way,
Yeah.
as you used to go up from the change rooms, and you used to come out, and the crowd was up behind you. And when you were in the change rooms beforehand, the place was still empty and you're grand. And you come out after your team talk, and there's a lad with their bow-ons going Diora straight away. And we'd already lost the game before the game ever started. We were young lads back then, and just been like, what the hell is this? And yeah, so a magic place. Let's get back a little bit to 96 itself. And so cup semi-final, cup final weekend, as Kieran kind of touched on, it used to be this one weekend where you could either play Friday night and Sunday, or Saturday night and Sunday. So it used to be a men's and women's kind of semi-final on Friday night, and the same on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Liam, let's start with Ballina. You guys played Denny, Notre Dame, so Jenkins and those guys, and you ended up winning by a point, but it was Denny would go on to win the next 4 cups in a row, so they were just about to come into their kind of big time with Anthony Jenkins and those sort of lads. Is there anything that sticks out in your own memory of that semi-final game of kind of, again, as you touched on, you won in the first round by a point, and here's another squeaker to get yourselves to the final?
Yeah, that was a tough game. I always had the misfortune of matching up with Anthony Jenkins, and he was a big physical guy, and he had long fingernails, and when he slapped the ball away from me, he'd always scrape your face. So I went into the final the next day, or 2 days later on Sunday, and my face was in bits, you know, the sweat coming into your eyes and everything. So it was always a tough matchup for me, because he was like 6'7", 6'8", strong. He could shoot the three. The only fortunate thing for me was he wasn't that quick. He wasn't that good off the dribble, so I could bang and bump him and use my gas fitness to try and wear him down. I can't remember the name of the American they had, but they had a very good American with them. And of course, Darren McGuinness was there as well. Can anybody remember another big guy about 6'6", 6'7"? He gave us.
Look it up here.
I could check the Bible here, and it'll take me a minute to find the page. Though.
That was a Ken Basket. It
was, yeah. That's him. He like the two of them gave us a lot of problems, and like it was just like, you know, basketball is very technical, and it's a lot of strategy. But I remember in the last 4 or 5 minutes, that was just a dogfight. It was just trying to get good shots, trying to rebound, trying to play good defense, dive on loose balls, and just hang in there. So there was nothing sophisticated about it. There was nothing classy about it. It was just two teams. And we knew after that, because we were all, like, I was 30, Dior was 35, 36, Paul was 33, Anthony was 37, 38, Sean had already finished. So we knew this was probably our last chance at in the cup. And we, like, it's, you know, you're in the dressing rooms afterwards, Conor, and you're saying, if these guys stick around, they're going to be very difficult. They're going to be very difficult to beat in this competition next year. Yeah. I never thought for a minute that they'd win 4 in a row, which is a phenomenal. Yeah. I don't think even Neptune did that.
Well, no, Neptune didn't. Neptune would have won 4 leagues in a row, but not 4 cups, and they were even more so than yourselves, Liam. They had to pace themselves for the cup, you know. A bit like yourselves, one of the years where they looked like they were ready to do everything. Jenkins went down injured, and that was probably the best cup they ever won because he was on the sideline, and yet they squeezed it out with one of those. But just to go back to what we were saying, to me, that cup campaign in '96, we were talking about the Ballina factor even, because as big a win, you mentioned the Killarney, I think that was the second round, but you played Tom O'Sullivan's first, that was the season Tom O'Sullivan and Brendan Flaherty came up, the famous.
Yeah. And
part of it was because whatever about players going up, supporters love going up to Ballina. And apparently it was when the two boys had retired with Neptune after winning another league in '95, they were signing off. They went up when Neptune played Ballina, and apparently, because everyone used to stay up, that was one of the highlights, mark it off, a night out in Ballina. You kind of floated the idea half in jest, but only half in jest, was it? How did the two boys end up that they then played in
But
that cup?
we became massive rivals, and we were delighted with that we could get to their level, because that's what we aspired to for years. And there was a fair dislike there, at the time where a few of us got ejected and stuff like that. We're playing on a Sunday at 3 o'clock in the Neptune Stadium, and a brawl broke out, and there was a serious rivalry there. But then all of a sudden, as we got older, we became very good friends, and a lot of it stemmed from those nights out in Cork, because Jackie Solon would have been instrumental in this as well, being a Mayo man. He would, when we go to Cork, he would always ask us to stay over. He'd look after us. He'd set up a bar in the stadium, and we would try and do the same here. So we're just sitting down having a few beers, and I said, the two, you're in good shape. You look like why don't you come up and play, and we win a cup up here? And that was just it. We're just like, this is 4 or 5 hours after the game was over, just having a bit of fun, And I think Brendan was living in Athlone at the time, I think, if memory serves me correctly. And I think he got on to Sully and said, we should do this for the crack. So I have to say, obviously winning, as Karen will tell you, yourself, lads, winning is always memorable. But to have the two boys with us, and throughout that year, it brought a different bit of energy to it, and it was great fun, to be sure. And it was the first time I guess we ever played in any competition where we had 9 or 10 guys that could play, because we had the two boys coming off the bench. We had Brian Collins, we had Gary Kelly, we had Brian McHale, Paul's brother, where we could go 8 or 9, 10 deep for the first time in our life. So if somebody got into foul trouble, or if somebody needed a rest, we could actually.
So Liam, how was it possible then for you to be struggling so much in the league at the same time?
The boys didn't play in the league, Conor.
Okay. So, okay, mercenaries, good stuff.
That was the agreement they made with the chairman at the time, a fellow called Timmy McGrath. He said, like, and it was obvious, like they said, we're like over 30 now, we can't play in every league match. I think they might have played in 3 or 4 league matches.
Yeah, they used it sparingly, and I think then when you were in the fight, they played some games. But like they'll say, like the night, because Vincent's were the cup team. They had in '93 and '94, and that first round in '95, '96, like they were a huge cup team, and the boys will say like that was probably one of the highlights they've ever had, and that was one of O'Sullivan's best ever games, shooting nights. And he'll always like that. He struggled then at that weekend, maybe because there was the prospect of playing Neptune in the final. Neptune would play Liam, and so they beat Notre Dame on the Friday, and the other semi-final was Star and Neptune, and that went to the wire as well. Both semi-finals were 1-point games, and there was a prospect of the boys. Jesus, we could be playing our whole team. Like, it was nightmarish stuff for them, and it threw them off. Well, Tom more than Brendan, I think Brendan, but whether he's, they said it to me when doing the book. Tom said he was all over the place, and you kind of basically said to him, look, you got us here, I'll take it over from here. Because again, it was one of, Tom really struggled shooting wise, but I remember you saying, but he always took a lot of watching, so teams felt he could get hot, so they still had to be honest, but he was a shadow. Whereas you took it to another level, like you're just scoring there, seeing 25 in the semi-final, 20 in the final. How was that when the two boys, along with, let's say you would have had Paul at the guard spot, then Brendan coming in. How did they complement each other, particularly that weekend?
Well, I suppose the good thing, Kieran, was we were mature at this stage, and all we wanted to do was win. So Paul had no issues with Brendan playing decent minutes, and it kind of, in the second half, whoever was playing well stayed out there. And Sully never started, but he always would have finished the game as well. So I think they were happy enough with the minutes. They were down to have fun. We were obviously trying to win the cup, but it'd be much more difficult for it to work if we were all 22, 23 years of age and everybody had their egos. But I think at that stage, we understood that the most important thing was winning. And when we had put this team together, we needed to put up a fairly decent show and get into semi-finals and finals if we could. So it was absolutely, as far as I could see, and there was a fair bit of dialogue between us. As far as I could see, there was no animosity or no problems. Everything went quite smoothly, and I said it's down to both sets of players were winners, and both sets of players were mature, and everybody just got on with it. So I can't remember any sort of incidents where things were.
Yeah, but I'd say it helped, like that Paul could really go for it. Like you mentioned, you had a depth that,
yeah,
you know, like it allowed, like there was no major drop off when Paul would come out of the rotation, because there was cup finals where Paul would have had to play 36, 37 minutes, I would say.
He never played any defense, so that'd be no problem for Paul.
Karen, let's go over to Meteors, because you guys beat Nave Weir in the semi-final. So I think you had lost to Nave Weir in the previous 2 or 3 cup semi-finals. Was it just kind of a sense of relief that you finally got past them, or was it a sense of like what do you remember of that kind of moment for yourselves?
I think over the years there's always been huge rivalry, as in terms of Dublin rivalry between Meteors and Nave Weir, and they always meet at the top level of competitions. We beat them, I think, in 92. Well, we in semi-final in 92 in the cup. And then we just had a bad run for 3 years. We lost to Talca, I think, in the quarterfinals in 93. And then we got to the cup weekend. I think that's what everybody's goal is, as Kieran was alluding to, is that people just wanted to play. They want to be in that weekend. And then you would see whether am I playing on the Friday or the Saturday. And to be honest with you, in 94, 95, we had the same personnel almost that we had in 96, but we didn't perform. We just did not get off the mark in either of those semi-finals. And the team we're pretty much devastated. And I think when we came into 96, we were just so determined that we just wanted to prove that we could actually play on the, you know, under the lights with the crowd in front of the TV cameras, because we just didn't do it the 2 previous years.
Karen, how different was it? How different was it in your prep, physical, mental, that adjustment?
I don't think
when you were playing a semi-final.
Joe was a fantastic coach.
How different was it to because you would see teams, you mentioned the big crowds, the TV. What was that like? How much of a jump was it for particularly the younger players, or even maybe senior players could care too much? Or where did you get that balance? How much of a jump was it?
Yeah, I think the team evolved. Like we lost Siobhan Caffrey in 92, and she was a huge a balancing influence on the team. And it kind of went through transition from 93 up to 96. And there was a core of us that kind of had remained: myself, Angie, Marian Mahoney, Siobhan Byrne, Niamh McMahon. And then we acquired Karen Staunton, Lorraine O'Carroll from Oblats. And then Orla came in and had a really good solid 3 years. And then we had Sinead Harvey and Ali were there that year. So we had a different type. We had some experience, but we also had a blend of younger players. And I know, like, if I think back to the final in 96, we wanted to win it. And I know Joe wanted to win it so badly. And we ran a small bench. And if I think back to the game, the strategy was kind of to stick with key players and then rotate in where we could. So I don't think we ran more than 7 deep in that final. And it was Siobhan, it was actually Niamh McMahon and Siobhan Byrne who actually came in. So we generally stuck with the starting 5.
It was Karen. Yeah. It was a very low scoring final. It was I think you kept Wildcats in the 30s, which in itself is incredible, but it was actually pretty much a carbon copy of the final in 92 because they only scored 34. So like, was that kind of a part of with Joe's game plan? It's like, let's keep it low scoring, or like, did it just naturally happen? Or
no, I think it just naturally happened. You know, there's certain about, I think, tension that I'm like, I know myself that if I didn't get nervous before a game, I wouldn't be ready for a game. And sometimes I know myself that the nerves would actually take over. So even I played for many years, I would have got nervous before games. And I think, you know, I think that the arena can be cruel, or it can like you. You know, I've seen, you know, in recent years, teams like Colester who played in a cup final and they just could not buy a basket. And you can see them you're even getting deflated for them. So it's really lucky if the ball will drop for you or not. And I think Neptune can be the same as well.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of talk, particularly that era about the adjustment of the baskets being different, maybe because there were more spectators behind or optically. Did you find that at all, Karen or Liam? Like what? No, it was the same as any gym.
I think so. I think no, I didn't. When you're in a game, you're in a game. You don't really tend to think about the crowd. The only gym that I would find optically strange was when playing out in DCU, where you don't have anything behind the basket, so it's actually hard to judge your range when shooting. But no, I think Neptune and both the arena, it wasn't. I wouldn't have seen that as being an issue. No. I think they're just horrible rings. That's all. Those bouncy rings.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the rings were the.
I'd say, Kieran, from being there, it's
a shooter. Connor, say it out. Don't be too modest.
I'd say for a lot of people, it's they don't play often in front of TV cameras and 2,000 people, and the rings are the easy out for you when that's the case. Like when you're in the arena and there's no one there, they're lovely rings to shoot on. It's lovely to be able to play in those baskets. It's just in the heat of the moment, it can be low scoring games, and it's just we like to protect our own little ego and say that it's the rings' fault. So I'd say that's more of it. Liam, I guess the final itself against Star. So Star at that stage they were kind of coming into the ascendancy, but I think Adrian and Gareth in particular are a couple of years younger than you. I think Gareth might be 2 years younger than you, and Adrian's a little younger than that. They would kind of have their kind of glory years, I'd say probably 3 or 4, or maybe 2 or 3 years after that point. Did you have similar to kind of Denny? Was it a little bit of we need to get these guys now? Like, was there any kind of, or what was your perception of Star at that time? I guess
we were concerned. They were top of the table. Conor, we were struggling. We had that inner belief from the 91 win and the 92 league win, and for that period of time, we were one of the better teams in the country. So whilst we were concerned, we felt that if we could, execute properly, that we'd win the game. But winning for me was the girls were getting presented with their medals, and we were lined up, waiting to get on. And I never saw a team as nervous in all my life as the Star boys. They looked so tense and so uptight and so nervous. I guess it was looking over at us, Diora, Jason Rubright, Thomas Saul, Brendan O'Flaherty, Paul McStay, and so on. But I said to Sean, these guys are scared out of their lives. We're going to kill them. They haven't got a hope. It was unbelievable now how, for a team that was going so well, I know they were a bit inexperienced and younger, but once we saw them face to face, we knew we were going to beat them. They looked so nervous.
It's an interesting one. I
remember talked about that nervousness in the cup. It can take you over. So that filled us even more with confidence, because we were a little bit apprehensive before the game and the build up the game, but we were drawn on our experiences to say, this will be all right, lads. We play well, we'll win it. When we saw the Star lads lined up beside us, it kind of, we felt that there was no possible way we could lose this.
I actually talked to Gareth about this before, Gareth Maguire, and he was kind of talking about how at that stage Star hadn't won like a major trophy, and they almost felt that they were getting in their own way at times when they were trying to get to that, particularly in the cup, that there was a little bit of a mental block about how they approached it. And I remember him telling a story about one of the years where I think it was semi-final stage, where all of a sudden the team had all new boots that out of nowhere, that they're kind of like, why are we doing stuff differently? Like, what's kind of happening here? Kieran, does that ring a bell for you?
It absolutely does, because actually, though they themselves would be beaten in the cup, Tralee would win that league against the Star team that were still learning how to win. And I remember Timmy Mack, their first game was in Neptune, and Timmy was wearing a suit, which that was fair enough. But I suppose you would have seen other coaches wear suits, but you would have had a lot of guys. He was on about routine. Every game is a big game if you're looking to win a league and a cup. So that but because he had seen so many guys who might be dressed in their jeans or whatever for a league game, and yet in the cup, then all of a sudden, they're like your man Shooter in Hoosiers. He shows up in a suit. Like, what's going on here? And another change to the routine, because there's going to be things that are going to be differently in the big games, but as much as you can, try and keep it within a certain thing. I also think we were talking a lot about Ballina, teams having to go to Ballina, but the thing about we've got to remember about Ballina, when they get to a cup, they'd bring Ballina to Neptune or to Dublin, and I would say they were hearing the drums. It wasn't just the sight of the boys in the warm-up. It was Dior is going to get you. That might have been part of what rattled them.
Yeah, and Liam, just touching on Dior, because Dior ended up MVP of the final. He had, I think, 30 in that game, and he had 31 in the previous final that you won. How comforting is it being able to go, Dior is one of the all-time legends, and if you associate one name with a team like Dior and Ballina are there hand in hand. How comforting was it to be able to kind of line up where you're kind of going, I've got this guy coming out here with me on the big occasion, to have someone like Dior?
Whether his scoring wasn't a factor at all, really. We didn't rely on his scoring. He was one of the few players that ever played in this country that could affect the game and dominate the game without scoring. So he often had stat lines where he had 8 points, 16 rebounds, 8 steals, 12 blocks. And our defense, our man-to-man defense was centered around him in the middle. So we'd always try and find somebody. Back in the day, you could find a guy that's not going to shoot the three in the 96 one. And he's that we're going to get a big Irish guy or a big American that we can sit him in the middle. There's no illegal defense, obviously. And then we could get up on the really good players and go body to body on them and make them put the ball on the floor. So he could block, Conor, he could block 8, 10 shots in a game. He could change 8 or 10 shots a game and it get us out to get easy baskets. So
yeah,
it was I'd love to know how many shots he took to score 31 points in those finals, because if memory serves me correctly, every time he got the ball, he shot it. But he could affect the game in so many other ways, and that's why we tried so hard to keep him, because he was awful important to us. He could dominate the game, and we could win the game. Him scoring 6 points. There's never been I don't think there's ever been an American like him. There's been Americans that were better than him, Louis Smith and maybe Terry and the boys. It's debatable, but he could have 7 or 8 assists as well, maybe 10 assists. He was a brilliant passer of the ball.
Yeah.
And he was so composed and so relaxed. While Paul and myself might be getting aggressive and agitated, he was always there, let's calm down, So he was perfect for us. And our defense was ran around Diora. And we always tried to find somebody that he could cover that wouldn't hurt us from long range. And if we could find that guy, then we were going to be very difficult to score against. So he was well kept to score. And in fact, when he came over first, Kieran will tell you, all he could do was dunk the ball. He couldn't really score, but as he got older, he developed into a more all-round player, and then he could, dominate the game of the defense and defensive end and still score 25, 30 points. So I think we've had a long career, and I guess the middle of it was the 80s was our time when or the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, up to 96 was our time. And with all the great Americans we had from all over the place, all our success came when the Euro was there. So I don't think it happened by accident.
And Kieran, obviously for you, it was a little bit different. There wasn't an American playing alongside you guys at the time. So, but you had the comfort level that, particularly kind of Mary beside you and Angie, the three of you were the top scorers when you won the cup the previous time, and then you're the top scorers again. What was it like having that comfort level of particularly those two beside you? That Angie, obviously, for those who don't know her, is the precursor to Lindsay Peat, is probably the fair way to describe it, is that she played...
That would probably be the best way to describe her, yeah.
Yeah, she was inter-county for Dublin, international in football, international in basketball, and I think she might have even spent some time in the States. So, yeah, just what was it like having the comfort level of those two in particular beside you?
Yeah, I think any team is built on just a continuity. And I think we had great continuity. So we, like, Angie joined us in 92. She came back from the States from LIU. And then Mary had been a stalwart with Meteors for a long time. But you also can't forget like Siobhan Byrne and Niamh McMahon as well. They were very, very experienced players. And that kind of stabilizes a team, having that kind of that level-headedness, not only level-headedness, but their competitiveness and their, I suppose, their dedication to the team. And I think as the longer you play with people, the more they get to know you and you get to know them. I think I had, like you did mention Angie and Mary, I absolutely adored playing inside. We would have played like a 3-out, 2-in, and I just loved playing inside with Mary. I didn't really have to, I knew where she was going to be, she knew where to move, and it was just a really, really good partnership when I played inside. Angie is probably one of the most dynamic players that I know. She is so committed, she was so passionate, and she would always, she was never afraid to call someone out when they weren't doing their job, either in a game or in training. And we developed a really good on-court relationship in the 5 years that we played, even more together. And we'd have a running joke, which was, we call it the quarterback and running back. Like, I know that if Angie got the ball on a rebound, that she was going down the floor, and I would run the side, cut in there, the old standard, get down as far as the free throw line, cut into by the 45, and just have your hands out, because I guarantee you that this pigeon killer was going to come in and land in your hands, and you'd have a 2-point layup, no problem. So I think what was nice about it was just that understanding, that they knew where you were going, you knew what they were going to do. And I think that's the joy of playing, is that when you can actually connect with
definitely.
Think about it, it's not, you're not second guessing them, and that was so nice to continue that, not only for just 1 year, for many years.
Many years.
And
I guess so. Both finals, after such close semi-finals, both finals ended up in scoreline anyway. In the end, reasonably comfortable. It's never fully comfortable. But is there any kind of standout memory or moment in that game that's kind of like, that was the key kind of point for us, where it was the winning of the game? Karen, I'll go with you first. Is there, but it might not even be a run or anything else. It might just be any standout memory in general.
Yeah, oh my goodness, you're asking me a tough one here. I think there is, and I hope it's the right game now, but I do remember, and she probably doesn't get enough credit, is Niamh McMahon, and the game was at the start, it was really, really close. I do remember both teams were trying to settle. It was pretty much basket for basket, and I think Niamh came on as sixth player, and she took 2 charges in the game. And I think at that point, I'm like, in my head, I go, okay, we have this game. We have this now, just based on her defense and the confidence that those two stops gave us. Well, gave me anyway. I'm like, okay, we are tuned in here, So to take two charges back to back, I'm like, yeah, this is us. This is our game. That would be my standout. I hope it's the right game. But
not many people will know and challenge on it. So but I love it that it's within a team. It can be something that's like, no one who was at that game is going to more than likely remember those 2 plays, and yet it shows so much about a team that you picked out something like that. That's it's only those within the group would ever remember that sort of thing, which is really stand out.
I think people tend to, that 3-point. No, I definitely, it has to be. It's the defensive turning point in games. Yeah. Okay.
And Liam, for yourself, was there any kind of obviously you've already said before the game?
Yeah, that was a big moment for us all. We just felt that they were very, very nervous. They were a very, very good team. Adrian and JD and Gareth were fantastic players. But this came into my head before Karen ever started talking about it. It's the same sort of thing. It's a foul. I think it was in the third quarter where Adrian went around Brendan Flaherty. Brendan and Tom Sullivan at the time. I think it was Bjorn, myself, and Jason Rubright. And Adrian takes it to the basket, and Sully comes up and smashes him on the ground. And Brendan comes up and gives him a high five, and we all come up like it was a foul call. But none of the star guys reacted. Now, if they did that to one of our guards, it would have been a reaction, an aggressive reaction that we try and protect our players. But that sort of aggression and that sort of a determination, same sort of a play as the barges that Karen talked about. Once that happened, Conor, I felt that fight has gone out of this team now, because they shouldn't have allowed that to happen. It was in modern day NBA basketball now, it was a flagrant foul, and it's not like Sully to do things like that, but he did it. He smashed Adrian, and Brendan came up, hit him a high five, and nothing happened. And I was kind of waiting for something to happen, but nothing happened. And then the game, as far as I was concerned, kind of fizzled out after that. And I think we ended up winning by 13 or 14 points.
Yeah. Interesting. And Kieran, from you, as obviously not involved in the teams, and it's probably different than those sort of moments, is there anything that stands out for you in the two kind of games?
No, just like we've talked about how Ballina, like they had a band of brothers. Like there was obviously Liam and Anthony and Paul, and Jora became one of those. But and we talked about how the two Cork lads came in. But I think Rubright did a good job for you that year, Liam, didn't he? Like
he was quiet in the semi-finals, I think, and
it was the final actually, Liam.
He was quiet.
Yeah, I was looking at the top scores, and it's very strange that he only had.
I remember at half time, I was covered 6 or 7 points, I think. Yeah, he had a couple of dunks and stuff. We had a very good semi-finals, and he bailed us out in Killarney in that second game. But I remember going to Sean at half time and saying, maybe I should switch over on Gabe Jackson. Gabe Jackson was killing us, and we didn't expect that. He was one of the few star guys that played well, and I think JD was worn out at this stage from all the banging and bumping and the fact that they had to play the night before. So I said to Sean, will I go over and fighting down Gabe Jackson? But Sean said to me, no. He said, you stay with Jar. He was scared of JD, because JD, like if he got going, was obviously a fairly serious contender. But I think Jackson had 18 in the first half, and I think he's like 16 in the second half. And
Liam, you mentioned there that you played on the Friday night, which helped. But like it was different times, and it might have been different for Karen. I don't know, because she'd been in Dublin. But teams would come up, their supporters. Like there was a culture of, having a few drinks. Maybe that there was a cup. It was a carnival, like the cup weekend. There would be a cup disco, and occasionally you'd have. Back in those days, it'd be completely different now. But you would have had guys who maybe won a huge cup semi-final, and they'd have had a few beers the night before, basically an All-Ireland final. There was a bit of that. I don't know if that was your experience at all, Liam, or also then the advantage of not playing on the Saturday night was the Friday night an extra. You had 36 hours to recover rather than like we were saying about Star. You were saying a nervousness. There could also been a flatness, like for them to get back to have beaten an Epsom team with the tradition they had. I'd say that took a lot out of them. And Karen, for you, was that an issue? Did you just roll with it, or was there deep down a bit of, I hope we get the Friday night draw? Or
well, I think what usually, like for the previous 3 years, because ourselves and Navarra had been matched up against each other, they put the two Dublin teams on a Friday night. So it always looked out that we always had that advantage. We always would have seen that as being an advantage, because you had that extra recovery. And you also had a chance then to watch who you were going to play in the final. So you had, even from Joe's perspective, you had a little bit more preparation. So you could actually weigh up both teams and say, okay, listen, this is how this will be our strategy against these. So it wasn't just a playing advantage, it was also a bit of a coaching advantage as well. You had more time to analyze the teams that you're playing.
Yeah, brilliant. I think, Liam, you had one of the understatements there. Is like JD was quiet, but we knew he could score, because you would have been playing alongside him when in the Roy Curtis for Ireland when he scored 57 points. So for him to score 7 points in that final was certainly a big part of that win. So I guess I want to finish up on just your overall kind of. Is there anything that's a standout? It doesn't have to be the basketball side of it, of kind of a standout memory of that kind of that moment in time for either of the clubs that unfortunately Meteors haven't won a cup since. I think you lost the following year's final. And Ballina, you got back in 01, like Kieran mentioned, but it was also your last kind of major trophy. So just kind of what it meant at that time, and just where it stands in your own memories of your careers. So Karen, I'll go with you first.
I think like when you play at that level and you're focused so much when you win, it's actually almost like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. It's kind of sort of, oh my God, okay, the last 5 months of 3 nights of my life and listening to Joe Kavanagh, it's like a weight lift off your shoulder. That would be my honest opinion. But then it's also you're delighted, but then like, okay, we've done it, let's do it again. You kind of get addicted to the feeling and the sensations that you get after such a cool weekend. Like we made it the following year, we lost to Wildcats, and then we made it in 2000 again. And we lost. So that would have been the last time that we would have competed. But I think the adrenaline that you do get from winning, it incites you, okay, this is worth it. This was all worth it. And I'm going to go and do it again, you know?
Yeah. Brilliant. And Liam?
Same as Karen, just trying so hard, Conor, to actually win one and to beat the likes of the Neptunes, the Calesters, the Vincents, the Stars. And the effort it took and the sacrifice that it took to get to that level and finally win that one in 91 was just, it was a complete elation and relief.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the game of basketball. I love how technical it is, how athletic it is, how sharp people have to be to play at a certain level. And I've had great memories, but when we won in 96, it was a downward fire for us. But we ended up playing in Division 1 and in 5 Division 1 titles. And I was fortunate enough to be still playing with that team, and I played with my nephews, and my my Sean's sons and stuff like that. And we won some national titles, which meant an awful lot to them, and it meant an awful lot to me. And then as a parent, that the pressure is off, you can enjoy it even more, and you're still getting a certain amount of success. So the whole 20 years or whatever it lasted for me was just a blast. And it was very important for us and for the supporters that we had, that Kieran alluded to, that we could win a couple of cup titles and a league title, and just to say for a split second that we were as good as anybody else in the country. And you know, it's just nothing but fond memories for us here in Ballina.
Oh, brilliant. And I think everyone would say that Ballina added a huge amount to Irish basketball for so many years, and it's only a wish that we can get it back, something like that going again in the future, because the West deserves it. So, and Kieran, you've probably the best helicopter view of kind of Irish basketball that anyone has. So is there either for the guys or just a standout kind of cup memory for yourself that would kind of
no, well, just on it, like I suppose, look, one thing that's really taken me and from, I suppose, covering all sports, all over basketball, all the more, to be honest with you, with the year we've just had, 20 by 20, and you'd have seen the hassle there was before the All-Ireland ladies Gaelic football semi-final, the to-ing and froing. I think one of the great things about our sport is the fact that you would have had both finals and semi-finals. Everyone going to a basketball cup weekend would know a Karen Hennessy as well as a Liam McHale. Everyone knows, if you're to this day, if you, like last year in the Neptune for the semi-finals, you would have had, everyone knew, let's say Glanmire were going up against Calester, you know, you would have had DCU going up against Brunel, and you knew, like, there was no one there was a Tralee and Anna were playing in between. The whole, and then, like, the point being is that we're all equal in that regard. I think that's a huge dimension that I think we need to appreciate more, and I would hope that Sport Ireland and the government would actually recognise more what our sport brings. We've been the groundbreakers on that front too, and I think that's a huge element. And look, we have to just say, when we're missing today's 2021 players playing, and just the Karen was saying off mic there, just a break there we had. The great thing though about basketball, and the disappointment is that the guys won't be able to meet now. This is virtual. The lovely tradition that we have, because we have a great history as a sport that we recognize the players from. It doesn't seem that long ago, guys, does it?
No,
it's 25 years. But
oh my God, yeah. When Conor rang me, I went, "It's what?" I think I stopped aging at 25 mentally. Well, mentally.
But the great thing about who we have, and the great thing about our sport, we're just saying, Karen and the great Lindsay Pete, Angie McNally's nearly predecessor or her successor, still play the game. Gillian, like Gillian Hayes, is an all-time great. We're who like they're now teammates. They're still playing the game, and just to hear Karen talk about how she's still coaching the game. Gillian is still hugely involved. What Liam and the McHales have brought to keeping that tradition alive out there. Liam's still coaching. Are you still coaching pre-COVID there, Liam? Were you still coaching in Corner Abbey? Are you still coaching?
Well, yeah. I'm there all the time with the girls,
Yeah, like that.
Still doing a bit of show in Ireland then,
That's the other great thing about the Cup, is it's our All-Ireland as basketball people. The league, I still think, is as sweet to win because it's the last thing of the season. Consistency. But, you won't maybe get everybody at the game that you win the league in, particularly when it's not a playoff format. But the Cup, our community come together, and you'll bump into people from all over. And as much as we'll be at each other's throats and maybe bitching the odd time about each other, there's basketball have great people involved, and it's just, like Liam's talking there, like going up against Adrian Fulton, anytime he sees Gareth or Danny, it's just, even though they were at each other's throats, you're funny, you said that like it was Tom Sull who took out Gareth, sure, like they're great friends now, obviously, and their children are playing for Ireland, and that's what is the pity, that we won't see the 2021 ballers we have at the moment in 2021, and to catch up with each other, that's a pity, but it'll make it all the more special when we can.
No, I think it's a great point, Kieran. The equal footing and everything else is something that we probably underestimate in our own minds, and it is something that's I think Gillian Hayes was one of the early players that I remember seeing at Cup finals, and was one of the people imprinted in my head just as much as any of the guys that I saw. So no, look, guys, thank you so much. It's a shame that we weren't able to celebrate it in person, but I'm glad that we had this conversation. I hope people enjoyed it, and we'll be back together as a basketball community pretty soon. And as Kieran said, we'll get to cherish those moments in person pretty soon. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you very much, Conor.
Thanks,
for making me realize how old I am.
You're still balling, Karen. You're still playing. That's great.